Will you be my new husband? Those 6 words spoken by a complete stranger in a crowded restaurant on Christmas night would change everything. But before that moment came the humiliation, a blind date walking out mid-appetizer because Ethan Cole had committed the unforgivable sin of being a single father. 6 years of loneliness, 6 years of rejection, 6 years of telling himself he was fine raising his daughter alone. Then Naomi Reed looked across the table with an impossible proposition that sounded insane, desperate, and somehow exactly right. If you want to see how a Christmas disaster became the greatest love story, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The restaurant was too bright, too festive, too full of happy couples celebrating Christmas. Ethan Cole sat frozen in his chair, watching his blind date's back disappear through the front door, her red coat a final flash of rejection before she vanished into the snowy night. She hadn't even finished her wine. Around him, conversations hummed, laughter bubbled from nearby tables. Somewhere in the back, a child squealed with delight. The normalcy of it all made the moment even more surreal. Ethan stared at the half-eaten breadstick on his plate, the butter congealing in the cold air from the door she'd left open. "This is fine," he told himself. "This is absolutely fine." It wasn't fine. "She seemed nice," the waiter said, approaching with cautious optimism. He was young, maybe 22, with the kind of hopeful expression that suggested he still believed in happy endings. "Did she have an emergency?" Ethan forced a smile that felt like broken glass. "Something like that." The waiter's face fell. He'd been working here long enough to recognize a disaster when he saw one. "I'm sorry, man. Can I get you anything else? Dessert? Another drink?" "Just the check, thanks." The waiter nodded and disappeared, leaving Ethan alone with the wreckage of his evening. He pulled out his phone, mostly to have something to do with his hands, and scrolled through the text messages that had preceded this catastrophe. "Sarah, from the office, 2:15 p.m. Her name is Jennifer. She's a lawyer, very accomplished. I think you two will really hit it off." "Sarah, from the office, 2:17 p.m. She knows you have a daughter. It's totally fine." That last message had been a lie. Or maybe Sarah had genuinely believed it, the way people who'd never been single parents believed a lot of things that turned out to be aggressively untrue. The conversation had started well enough. Jennifer was attractive, articulate, interesting. She'd ordered the seafood linguine and asked intelligent questions about his work as an architect. For 15 beautiful minutes, Ethan had allowed himself to hope. Then Mia had called. Ethan had excused himself, stepped away from the table, and answered with the slightly worried tone every single parent knew intimately. "Hey, sweetheart. Everything okay?" "Daddy, when are you coming home?" Mia's voice had been small, slightly congested. She'd been fighting a cold all week. "Mrs. Patterson is there with you, remember? I'll be home in about an hour." "My throat hurts." Ethan's chest had tightened. "Did you take the medicine Mrs. Patterson gave you?" "Yeah, but it tastes yucky." "I know, baby, but it'll help. Can you be brave for me for just a little bit longer?" "Okay." A pause. "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "I love you." His heart had cracked open. "I love you too, Mia. So much. I'll be home soon, okay? We can watch a Christmas movie. Even though it's late. Even though it's late." When he'd returned to the table, Jennifer had been checking her phone with the studied casualness of someone preparing an exit strategy. She'd looked up as he sat down, her smile professional and distant. "Everything all right?" "Yeah, just my daughter. She's not feeling well." Jennifer had nodded, taken a sip of wine, and set down her glass with the kind of finality that made Ethan's stomach drop. "Look, Ethan, you seem like a really nice guy." Here it comes, he'd thought. "But I need to be honest with you. I'm at a point in my life where I'm focused on my career. I work 60-hour weeks. I travel constantly. And I'm looking for someone who can match that lifestyle." She'd paused, searching for diplomatic words. "Someone with a child. That's a lot of responsibility, a lot of complications. I don't think I'm in a place where I can take that on." "I'm not asking you to take anything on," Ethan had said, hating the defensive edge in his voice. "I'm just asking you to have dinner." "I know, but where does dinner lead? If we keep seeing each other, eventually I'd have to meet her, get involved, and that's not what I want right now." The The most devastating part was how reasonable she'd sounded. How kind, even, like she was doing him a favor by being upfront about her limitations. "I understand," Ethan had said, because what else could he say? Jennifer had stood, gathering her coat and purse with practiced efficiency. "I hope you find someone who's a better fit. I really do. Merry Christmas." And then she was gone. Now sitting alone at a table set for two, Ethan felt the full weight of his isolation settling over him like snow. 6 years since Emily had died. 6 years of being both mother and father to Mia. Of PTA meetings and princess parties and midnight fever checks. 6 years of well-meaning friends trying to set him up with women who inevitably reached the same conclusion Jennifer had. He came with too much baggage. The waiter returned with the check, his expression sympathetic. Ethan pulled out his credit card and tried not to think about how he'd just paid $80 to be rejected in public on Christmas. "Rough night?" a voice said. Ethan looked up. At the table next to his, a woman sat alone with a glass of red wine and an untouched pasta dish. She was maybe 35, with dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail and sharp, intelligent eyes that studied him with unsettling directness. Her charcoal suit was expensive, tailored. Everything about her screamed power and control. "You could say that," Ethan replied, trying to signal that he wasn't interested in conversation. The woman didn't take the hint. "I wasn't eavesdropping intentionally, but these tables are close." She gestured to the narrow space between them. "She left because you have a daughter?" Ethan felt heat rise to his face. "It's complicated." "It's not, though." The woman took a sip of wine, unhurried. "She wanted someone uncomplicated. You're a package deal. She didn't want the package." There was something almost clinical in the way she said it, like she was analyzing a business transaction rather than a human moment. It should have been off-putting, but Ethan found himself oddly grateful for the bluntness. "Pretty much," he admitted. "Her loss." The woman set down her glass. "How old is your daughter?" 8. "Good age. Old enough to have real conversations, but young enough to still think you're a superhero." Despite everything, Ethan smiled. "You have kids?" Something flickered across the woman's face. Pain, quickly masked. "No, I can't have children." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken history. Ethan felt like he'd stumbled into a minefield. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. She shrugged, but the gesture was too casual, too practiced. "It is what it is. I've made peace with it." A pause. "Mostly." The waiter appeared at her table. "Can I get you anything else, Ms. Reed?" "No, thank you. Just the check." As the waiter left, the woman, Ms. Reed, turned back to Ethan with an expression he couldn't quite read. She looked like someone making a decision, weighing variables, calculating odds. "This is going to sound insane," she said. Ethan waited. "But I have a proposition for you." Every instinct told Ethan to make an excuse and leave. To go home to Mia, take her temperature, make hot chocolate, and forget this entire disastrous evening. But something in the woman's eyes held him in place, a desperate kind of hope that he recognized because he'd seen it in his own mirror. "I'm listening," he said. Miss Reed leaned forward slightly, her voice low enough that neighboring tables couldn't hear. "I heard what that woman said to you. About not wanting complications, about your daughter being a responsibility she couldn't take on. And I thought, what if that's exactly what I'm looking for?" Ethan's confusion must have shown because she continued quickly. "I'm a corporate attorney. I work 70 hours a week. I make partner in 6 months if I play my cards right. My life is all deadlines and depositions and client dinners." She paused. "And it's empty. Completely, devastatingly empty. I'm not sure what you're suggesting." "I'm suggesting..." She took a breath. "I'm suggesting that maybe we could help each other." "Help each other how?" "You need someone who won't run when they find out you're a father. Someone who sees your daughter as an asset, not a liability. And I need..." She faltered, the cool professional facade cracking slightly. "I need a family. I want to come home to something real, someone who needs me, a child to love." Ethan stared at her, certain he'd misunderstood. "Are you asking me to marry me?" The words came out steady, sure. "Not right now, obviously, but eventually. We could date, get to know each other, see if it works, but we'd both go into it knowing what we want. No surprises? No disappointments? Just two people who fit together because of their circumstances, not in spite of them. This is crazy, Ethan said. Probably. You don't even know me. I know you're a single father who just got rejected for the crime of loving his daughter. I know you're still here instead of chasing after that woman, which means you have dignity. And I know you're listening to me instead of leaving, which means some part of you thinks this might not be completely insane. Ethan shook his head, but he couldn't deny the truth in her words. Why would you want this? You're obviously successful, intelligent, attractive. You could have anyone. Anyone except what I actually want. Her voice went quiet. I spent my 20s building my career, my 30s trying to have a baby that never came. 3 rounds of IVF, 4 miscarriages, a marriage that couldn't survive the grief. She looked away. I'm 40 next month. My window for being a mother is closing, and I've accepted that I'll never be pregnant. But I can't accept never being a mom. The raw honesty of it hit Ethan hard. This wasn't some opportunistic scheme. This was a woman in pain, reaching for something to fill an unbearable void. What about love? He asked. What about it? Shouldn't that be part of the equation? Love is a luxury, she said. Partnership is practical. Companionship is sustainable. And from where I'm sitting, those things might be more valuable than romance anyway. Ethan thought about the past 6 years, the loneliness, the weight of being the only parent, the only decision maker, the only one who showed up to school plays and doctor's appointments, the bone-deep exhaustion of carrying it all alone. I don't even know your first name, he said. She smiled, a real smile this time, not the practiced professional one. Naomi. Naomi Reed. Ethan Cole. Nice to meet you, Ethan Cole. They sat in silence for a moment, the absurdity of the situation settling over them both. Around them, the restaurant continued its Christmas celebration, oblivious to the strange negotiation taking place in the corner. If we did this, Ethan said slowly, and that's a huge if, what would it look like? Naomi seemed to relax slightly, as if his willingness to discuss logistics was a form of acceptance. We'd start simple, coffee, lunch, actual dates, get to know each other like normal people. At some point, if things are going well, I'd meet your daughter. No pressure, no expectations, just see if we work. And if we don't, then we part ways, no harm, no foul. That's easier said than done if Mia gets attached. Which is why we'd be careful, Naomi said. Slow, intentional. I'm not suggesting we rush into anything. I'm just suggesting we consider the possibility that sometimes the most practical solution is also the right one. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Patterson. Mia's asleep. Fever's down. Take your time. He looked at the message, then back at Naomi. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why me? Why not, I don't know, adopt? Foster care? There are other ways to be a mother. Naomi's expression softened. I've thought about it. I have an application half filled out on my computer, but every time I try to complete it, I freeze, because I know the questions they'll ask. About my work schedule, my travel, my support system, and I know I'll fail every reasonable metric for being a good parent. But you think being with me would change that? I think being with you would give me the structure I need, the accountability, the reason to come home instead of staying late at the office. And maybe, she hesitated, maybe it would give your daughter something too, someone else to love her, someone else to show up. It was a seductive thought. Ethan had to admit that. The idea of partnership, of shared responsibility, of someone who actually wanted the life he was living instead of seeing it as an obstacle. I need time to think about this, he said. Of course. Naomi pulled a business card from her purse and slid it across the table. Call me if you want to talk more. Or don't. No pressure. Ethan picked up the card. Naomi Reed, senior partner, Reed and Associates. A phone number, an email, a downtown address. This is the strangest Christmas I've ever had, he said. Same. Naomi stood, gathering her coat. For what it's worth, I hope you call. I think we could be good for each other. Or we could be a complete disaster. She smiled. There's always that possibility. But you know what? At least it would be an interesting disaster. With that, she left, and Ethan was alone again. But this time, the silence felt different, less like abandonment and more like possibility. He sat there for another 10 minutes, turning the business card over in his hands, trying to process what had just happened. A stranger had proposed marriage, a successful, intelligent, seemingly sane stranger who had looked at his life and seen something worth joining instead of something worth fleeing. It was insane. It was impossible. It was... His phone rang. Mia. "Hey, sweetheart," he answered. "I thought you were asleep." I woke up. Her voice was groggy, congested. "Are you still at dinner?" "Just leaving now. I'll be home in 20 minutes. "Was she nice, the lady you had dinner with?" Ethan's throat tightened. He'd tried to keep this date casual, low-key, but Mia had known. Of course she'd known. Kids always knew. "She left early," he said carefully. "It didn't work out." "Oh." A pause. "I'm sorry, Daddy." "It's okay, baby. Not everyone is meant to be part of our family." "Do you think anyone will ever want to be part of our family?" The question hit him like a physical blow. This was what he'd been trying to protect her from, the sense that they were somehow less than, that they were a unit people tolerated but didn't choose. "I think the right person will," he said, surprised by the certainty in his voice. "Someone who sees how amazing you are and wants to be part of that." "You really think so?" "I really think so." After he hung up, Ethan looked at Naomi's card one more time. Then he tucked it into his wallet, paid his bill, and walked out into the snowy Christmas night. The drive home took him through neighborhoods draped in lights. Every window seemed to glow with warmth, with family, with the kind of life he'd once had and thought he'd never have again. He thought about Emily, about the way she'd made their house feel like home, about the hole she'd left that he'd been trying to fill with work and routine, and the pretense that he was fine. But he wasn't fine. And Mia wasn't fine. They were surviving, yes, managing, getting by. But was that enough? Was that what Emily would have wanted for them? When he got home, Mrs. Patterson was knitting in the living room, the TV on low. She looked up with a sympathetic smile that told him Sarah had probably already texted her about the disaster. "How's she doing?" Ethan asked. "Sleeping soundly. Fever broke around 8. She's a tough cookie." "She is," Ethan agreed. He paid Mrs. Patterson, thanked her, and saw her out. Then he climbed the stairs to Mia's room and stood in the doorway, watching her sleep. She had Emily's nose, his eyes, and a stubborn chin that was entirely her own. Her arm was wrapped around a stuffed dragon named Sir Puffington, and her nightlight cast gentle stars across the ceiling. In that moment, looking at his daughter, Ethan made a decision. Maybe Naomi Reed's proposal was crazy. Maybe it would blow up in his face. Maybe he was setting himself up for another kind of heartbreak. But maybe, just maybe, she was right. Maybe they could help each other. Maybe practical could become real. Maybe a family didn't have to look traditional to be whole. He pulled out his phone and stared at the business card one more time. Then, before he could overthink it, he typed out a message. "This is Ethan. From the restaurant. I'd like to talk more. Coffee this week?" He hit send and immediately felt his heart start racing. What was he doing? This was insane. He should delete the message, block the number, pretend this entire evening had never happened. His phone buzzed. "Naomi, I was hoping you'd text. Tuesday at 10, there's a place called Morningside near my office. Good coffee, quiet enough to talk." Ethan typed back. "Tuesday at 10 works. Naomi, see you then." And Ethan, thank you for taking a chance. He set his phone down and sat on the edge of Mia's bed, careful not to wake her. She stirred slightly, mumbling something about dragons, then settled back into sleep. "I don't know if I'm doing the right thing," he whispered to her sleeping form. "But I'm trying. I'm trying to give us something better." Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white. Christmas was ending. A new day was beginning, and somewhere across the city, a woman named Naomi Reed was probably sitting in her empty apartment, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life or the bravest decision. Ethan wondered the same thing, but for the first time in 6 years, he felt something besides resignation and exhaustion. He felt hope. Fragile, terrifying, completely illogical hope. Tuesday was 4 days away. 4 days to second-guess himself, to come up with 1,000 reasons why this would never work, to talk himself out of showing up. But as he kissed Mia's forehead and turned out the light, Ethan knew he would be there. Because whatever else Naomi Reed was offering, it was better than another evening like this one. Better than another year of watching his daughter's face fall when dates didn't work out. Better than resigning himself to a lifetime of almosts and not quites. He went to his own room and changed into sweats, then sat on the edge of his bed, looking at the photo on his nightstand. Emily, pregnant with Mia, laughing at something he'd said. Her hair was messy from the wind, her smile brilliant and alive. "I don't know what you'd think about this," he said to the photo. "Probably that I've lost my mind. But I need to try something different. For Mia. For me." The photo didn't answer, but he hadn't expected it to. Emily was gone. Had been gone for so long now that sometimes he struggled to remember the sound of her voice. And while that fact still hurt, it didn't devastate him the way it once had. Grief had softened into something gentler, something that allowed for the possibility that life could surprise him again. He thought about Naomi's question. Can you be my new husband? Not will you, not would you, but can you? As if it were a matter of capability rather than desire. As if love were a skill that could be learned instead of a lightning strike that either hit or didn't. Maybe she was right. Maybe after everything, practical was exactly what he needed. Ethan lay back against his pillows and stared at the ceiling. Tuesday, coffee, a conversation that would either lead nowhere or change everything. He should have been nervous. He should have been talking himself out of it. Instead, he found himself thinking about what he'd wear, what he'd say, how he'd explain to this virtual stranger why he was willing to consider something so unconventional. Because the truth was simple. He was tired of being alone. And if there was even a chance that Naomi Reed could help fill the silence in his house, the emptiness in his daughter's eyes when she asked if anyone would ever want to be part of their family, then he owed it to both of them to try. Tuesday couldn't come soon enough. Tuesday morning arrived with the kind of cold that made every breath visible. Ethan stood outside Morningside Coffee at 9:55, second-guessing everything. His palms were sweating despite the temperature, and he'd changed his shirt 3 times before leaving the house. The navy sweater he'd settled on felt too casual now, too deliberate in its attempt to look effortlessly put together. Through the window, he could see Naomi already seated at a corner table, her attention focused on her phone. She wore a cream-colored blouse and looked every bit as composed as she had on Christmas night. No visible nerves, no uncertainty, just the same controlled poise that both intimidated and intrigued him. He pushed through the door and she looked up immediately, offering a small smile that seemed genuinely warm. "You came," she said, standing to greet him. "You thought I wouldn't? I thought there was a 50-50 chance you'd decide I was insane and block my number." Ethan laughed despite his nerves. The thought crossed my mind. They settled into their seats and an awkward silence descended. The kind of silence that made Ethan hyper-aware of every small sound. The hiss of the espresso machine, the murmur of other conversations, the scrape of his chair against the floor. "I don't actually know how to do this," Naomi admitted, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup. "I've been preparing for depositions since I was 25, but apparently I have no script for coffee with the stranger I proposed to in an Italian restaurant." "That makes 2 of us," Ethan said, "though I have to admit this is definitely the weirdest dating situation I've ever been in." "Is that what this is? Dating?" "I don't know what else to call it." Naomi considered this. "Fair enough. So maybe we should start with the basics. Tell me about yourself, beyond single father and architect." Ethan took a sip of his coffee, buying time to organize his thoughts. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Nothing. Whatever feels important." He set down his cup and leaned back. "Okay. I grew up in Pennsylvania, small town, the kind where everyone knows everyone. My dad was a contractor, my mom was a teacher. I always liked building things, so architecture felt natural. Met my wife Emily in college. She was pre-med, brilliant, completely out of my league." "I doubt that," Naomi said quietly. "You didn't know her." The words came out sharper than he'd intended, and he immediately softened his tone. "She was special. The kind of person who made everyone around her better. We got married right after graduation. She went to medical school. I started at a firm. Mia came along when we were 28. Best thing that ever happened to us." "And then?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Brain aneurysm. One day she was fine, complaining about a headache. The next day she was in a coma. 3 days later she was gone. Mia was 2.5, barely old enough to remember her." The grief in his voice was old but not absent. Naomi didn't offer platitudes or sympathy, and he appreciated that more than he could say. "I'm sorry," was all she said. "Me too." Ethan traced the rim of his cup with one finger. The first year was survival mode, just getting through each day, making sure Mia was fed, clothed, loved. The second year was when the loneliness really hit. All my married friends started treating me differently, like I was contagious or something. The single people didn't know what to do with me because I came with a toddler. I existed in this weird, in-between space. And now? Now Mia's 8. She's smart, funny, completely obsessed with dragons. She reads at a 6th grade level and can't tie her shoes to save her life. She's everything to me. He met Naomi's eyes, which is why this whole thing scares me, because if I'm making a mistake, it doesn't just affect me. "I understand that," Naomi said, "and I wouldn't be here if I took it lightly. Can I tell you about me? Please." She shifted in her seat, her fingers drumming once against the table before going still. "I grew up in Chicago. My parents were both lawyers. Corporate, high-powered, completely devoted to their work. I spent most of my childhood with nannies while they built their careers. I swore I'd be different, that I'd have balance, a family, a life outside the office. What happened? Law school happened, then a prestigious firm, then partnership track, then marriage to a man who was just as ambitious as I was. We thought we had time. We thought we could have it all, just later, once we'd established ourselves." Her voice went flat. "Turns out later is sometimes too late." "The IVF?" Ethan asked gently. "Started when I was 34. By then, we'd been trying naturally for 3 years with no success. The doctor said my egg quality was poor, probably from stress and age. We tried anyway, 3 rounds, 4 miscarriages. Each one was..." She paused, searching for words. "Devastating doesn't quite cover it. Neither does traumatic. It was like losing a future I'd been counting on, losing the person I thought I'd become." "Your husband couldn't handle it?" "He wanted to move on, adopt, use a surrogate, try egg donation. But I couldn't. I was stuck in this loop of grief and failure. Every month was another reminder of what my body couldn't do. Eventually he gave up, said he couldn't watch me destroy myself anymore. Filed for divorce when I was 37. Ethan watched her carefully. Beneath the composed exterior, he could see the cracks, the way her voice tightened on certain words, the tension in her shoulders, the carefully controlled expression that suggested years of practice hiding pain. "That must have been incredibly hard," he said. "It was clarifying," Naomi corrected. "I realized I'd been chasing the wrong things, or chasing the right things in the wrong order. My career was everything I'd worked for, but it wasn't enough. And motherhood, the traditional path anyway, was closed to me, so I had to figure out what was left." "And this is what you came up with? Proposing to strangers in restaurants?" She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "Only the ones who look like they might understand desperation. I don't know if I should be flattered or concerned. Both, probably." Naomi leaned forward slightly. "Look, I know this is unconventional, insane even, but I've spent 3 years trying to make peace with the idea that I'll never be a mother. And I can't. Every time I see a child, every time one of my colleagues mentions their kids, every school play and soccer game and parent-teacher conference I hear about, it's like a knife. So when I heard that woman reject you because you had a daughter, something clicked. Because what she saw as a liability, I see as a gift." "Mia's not a consolation prize," Ethan said carefully. "I know that, and I'm not looking for her to fill a hole in my life. But maybe I could fill a hole in hers. Maybe I could be the person who shows up, who braids her hair and helps with homework and teaches her things, not because I'm trying to replace anyone, but because I genuinely want to be there." The sincerity in her voice caught Ethan off guard. This wasn't a woman looking for a quick fix or an easy solution. This was someone who'd thought through every angle and still chosen to take a leap. "What do you know about being a parent?" he asked. "Honestly, almost nothing. I can negotiate a multi-million-dollar contract, but I've never changed a diaper or dealt with a tantrum. I don't know what 8-year-olds like or how to talk to them. I'm completely out of my depth." "Then why do this?" "Because some things are worth learning. And because..." She hesitated, vulnerability flickering across her face. "Because I'm tired of being good at things that don't matter. I want to be bad at something important. Does that make sense? It did. More than Ethan wanted to admit. They talked for 2 hours. The coffee shop filled and emptied around them, but they barely noticed. Naomi told him about her work, about the thrill of winning cases, and the emptiness of celebrating alone. Ethan talked about Mia's obsession with fantasy novels, her terrible jokes, her habit of leaving shoes in the middle of the hallway, small details that painted a picture of their lives. What does Mia know about this? Naomi asked eventually. Nothing. I haven't told her I'm dating anyone. Probably wise. She asks sometimes about whether I'm lonely, whether anyone will ever want to be part of our family. Ethan's voice roughened. She shouldn't have to worry about that. She's 8. But she does worry. Yeah, she does. Naomi was quiet for a moment. If we do this, if we try this, I need to be clear about something. I won't meet her until we're both sure. Until there's a real chance this could work. I won't be another person who disappoints her. I appreciate that. And I need you to be honest with me. If this isn't working, if you don't feel it, tell me. Don't string me along because you think it's the kind thing to do. Same goes for you. They shook on it, a bizarrely formal gesture that made them both laugh. Over the next 3 weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Coffee twice a week, lunch on Saturdays while Mia was at her friend's house. They talked about everything: politics, movies, childhood memories, fears, dreams. Ethan learned that Naomi was terrified of dogs after being bitten as a child, that she'd wanted to be a teacher before her parents convinced her law was more practical, that she could quote entire episodes of trashy reality TV despite her sophisticated exterior. Naomi learned that Ethan still slept on his side of the bed even though Emily had been gone for 6 years, that he'd built Mia's entire dollhouse from scratch, that he cried during animated movies but never at funerals. Slowly, carefully, they began to trust each other. I think I'm ready, Naomi said one Saturday afternoon as they walked through the park. Snow crunched under their feet and her breath came out in white puffs. To meet her. If you think she's ready. Ethan's stomach flipped. This was the moment he'd been both anticipating and dreading. Are you sure? No, but I don't think I'll ever be completely sure, and waiting for certainty feels like a waste of time we don't have. He thought about Mia, about how she'd been lately, more withdrawn, quieter. Her teacher had mentioned she seemed sad during recess, preferring to read alone rather than play with other kids. Okay, he said, but we take it slow. Maybe start with something casual, the park maybe. No pressure. Whatever you think is best. They planned it for the following Saturday. A simple afternoon at the duck pond where Mia loved to feed the birds. Ethan told his daughter he had a friend he wanted her to meet, someone who was important to him. Mia had asked a dozen questions he'd deflected, and by the time Saturday arrived, she was vibrating with nervous energy. Is she your girlfriend? Mia asked for the 3rd time as they walked to the park. She's someone I care about, Ethan said carefully. Someone I'd like you to know. But is she your girlfriend? Kind of, maybe. It's complicated. Adults always say that when they don't want to answer. He couldn't argue with that. Naomi was already there, standing by the pond in jeans and a navy peacoat, looking less like a corporate attorney and more like someone who belonged in this setting. When she saw them approaching, her expression cycled through nervousness, hope, and determination before settling into a warm smile. Hi, she said, directing it at Mia. You must be Mia. Your dad's told me a lot about you. Mia studied her with the intense scrutiny only an 8-year-old could manage. He didn't tell me much about you. That's fair. What would you like to know? Do you like dragons? Naomi didn't miss a beat. I don't know much about them, to be honest, but I'd love to learn. What's your favorite color? Green, like forests? Do you have any pets? No, I work too much. It wouldn't be fair to an animal. That's responsible, Mia said, her tone suggesting she was still making up her mind. Do you want to feed the ducks with us? I'd like that very much. They spent the next hour at the pond. Naomi asked questions about Mia's school, her books, her dragon collection. She listened with genuine interest as Mia explained the difference between wyverns and true dragons, never once talking down to her or pretending to know more than she did. At one point, Mia launched into an elaborate story about a dragon named Sparkle Mist who saved a kingdom from an evil wizard. Naomi listened intently, asking clarifying questions about the wizard's motivations and whether Sparkle Mist had any dragon friends. Ethan watched them together and felt something shift in his chest. This could work. It was crazy and unconventional and nothing like he'd imagined, but watching Naomi crouch down to Mia's level, watching his daughter's face light up as she talked about her favorite stories, it felt right. "She's nice," Mia announced on the drive home. "I like her." "Yeah?" "Yeah. She listens. Like, really listens. Not like when Uncle Dave pretends to pay attention but is actually looking at his phone." Ethan smiled. "She does listen well. Are you going to marry her?" The question caught him off guard. Where did that come from? "You look at her the way you look at Mom in pictures, like she's special." His throat tightened. "Would that be okay if I did marry her someday?" Mia was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the passing houses. "I think so. But I'd need to get to know her more first, to make sure she's not secretly mean or something." "That's very wise." "I'm a wise person, Daddy." "You definitely are." Over the next 2 months, Naomi became a regular presence in their lives. She came to Saturday morning pancakes, to Sunday afternoon movies, to quiet evenings of homework help and bedtime stories. She learned to braid Mia's hair, fumbling at first but improving with practice. She discovered a shared love of fantasy novels and started a book club with Mia, just the two of them. Ethan watched his house transform. Naomi's legal briefs appeared on the kitchen counter. Her coffee mug claimed a spot in the cabinet. Mia's drawings started including 3 figures instead of 2. It felt like building something, slowly, carefully, brick by brick. "I think I'm falling for you," Naomi admitted one evening after Mia had gone to bed. They were sitting on the couch, her head resting on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. "I didn't expect to. I thought this would be practical, functional, but it's more than that." "For me too," Ethan said softly. "You fit here. Both of you fit." She turned to look at him, her eyes serious. "I need to tell you something." His stomach dropped. "Okay." "I got offered a promotion, managing partner. It's everything I've worked for. But it means longer hours, more travel, less flexibility. Are you going to take it?" "I don't know. Part of me wants it desperately, but another part, a bigger part, knows it would mean less time here, with you and Mia. And I don't want that." Ethan pulled her closer. "What do you want?" "This. I want this. I want Saturday mornings and terrible dragon stories and Mia's questions about everything. I want to come home to people who care whether I had a good day. I want..." She paused. "I want to be her mom. Not in a legal sense necessarily, but in every other way that matters." "She wants that too. I can see it." "Does that scare you?" "Terrifies me," Ethan admitted. "Because if this falls apart, it'll break her heart. And mine." "Then we don't let it fall apart." They kissed, slow and sweet, and Ethan felt the last of his reservations crumbling. This wasn't what he'd planned. It wasn't the fairy tale romance he'd had with Emily, but it was real and solid and grounded in a shared commitment to building something lasting. 2 weeks later, Mia's school held an art show. Ethan had been looking forward to it, proud of the painting Mia had been working on in secret. When they arrived, she pulled him toward her display with barely contained excitement. The painting showed 3 figures at a duck pond: a tall man, a small girl, and a woman with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Underneath, in Mia's careful handwriting, were the words, "My new family." Ethan's eyes burned. "Mia, this is beautiful." "Do you think Miss Naomi will like it?" "I know she will." They found Naomi examining another student's work. When she saw Mia's painting, her composure finally cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she knelt in front of Mia. "Can I give you a hug?" she asked. Mia nodded, and Naomi pulled her close, holding on like she'd never let go. That should have been the perfect moment, the validation that everything they were building was real and good and worth it. But as they stood there, Ethan caught sight of Marcus Reynolds, Emily's brother, someone who'd been part of Mia's life since birth. Marcus stared at the painting with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. Then his gaze shifted to Naomi, and something hardened in his face. "Ethan," he said, approaching with measured steps. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" They stepped outside, leaving Naomi and Mia admiring artwork. The evening air was cool, and Ethan could see his breath. "New family?" Marcus asked, his voice tight. "Really? It's just a title for a painting." "Is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're trying to erase my sister." The accusation stung. "That's not what this is." "Then what is it? Because 6 months ago you were alone, mourning Emily like a good widower should, and now you've got some woman playing house, and my niece is calling it her new family, like the old one never mattered." "Emily will always matter," Ethan said, struggling to keep his voice even. "She's Mia's mother. Nothing changes that." "Ah, except you're letting this stranger take her place." "Naomi's not trying to replace anyone. She's just what? Convenient? A warm body to fill the space Emily left?" Ethan's hands clenched into fists. "You have no idea what you're talking about. I know you're moving on pretty damn fast. I know my sister's been gone for 6 years, and you're already building a new family like she was replaceable." "She wasn't replaceable. But I can't spend the rest of my life grieving, and neither can Mia." "So you replace her mother instead?" "Mia needs more than one parent. She needs someone else to show up, to care, to be there. Naomi gives her that." Marcus shook his head, disgust evident on his face. "I thought better of you, I really did. But I guess everyone has their limit for loyalty." He walked away, leaving Ethan standing alone in the parking lot, his earlier happiness evaporating into guilt and doubt. When he went back inside, Naomi took one look at his face and knew something was wrong. "What happened?" "Nothing, just an old friend." But it wasn't nothing, and they both knew it. The warmth of the evening had curdled into something complicated and uncomfortable. Later, at home, after Mia had gone to bed, Naomi asked again, "What did he say to you?" Ethan sank onto the couch, exhausted. "That I'm replacing Emily, that I'm moving on too fast, that Mia calling you part of our family means I've forgotten her mother." "And what do you think?" "I think—" He paused, trying to organize the chaos in his head. "I think he might be right. About some of it. This is happening fast, and maybe I haven't thought enough about how it looks, about what it means." Naomi's expression closed off, a familiar professional mask sliding into place. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe we need to slow down. Take a step back." "A step back," she repeated flatly. "After 2 months of building this? After your daughter painted us as her family? I don't want to hurt her more by rushing into something we're not ready for." "We are ready. Or at least I am, but apparently you're not." "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Naomi stood, grabbing her coat from the back of the chair. "You know what your problem is, Ethan? You're so afraid of dishonoring Emily's memory that you won't let yourself actually live. You invited me in, you let me fall in love with you and Mia, and now you're pulling back because one person questioned your choices." "He's not just one person. He's family. And what am I?" The question hung between them, unanswered. "You're important," Ethan said finally. "You matter, but this is complicated. Life is complicated. Love is complicated, but you don't solve that by running away." "I'm not running away. I'm protecting my daughter." "From what? From someone who loves her? Who shows up every day? Who wants to be part of her life?" Naomi's voice cracked. "Or are you protecting yourself from having to choose between your past and your future?" Before Ethan could respond, the sound of footsteps on the stairs made them both freeze. Mia stood in the doorway, her eyes red from crying. "Are you fighting?" she asked in a small voice. "No, sweetheart," Ethan started, but Mia cut him off. "I heard you. Through the vent." She looked at Naomi. "You're leaving, aren't you? Because Uncle Marcus was mean to Daddy." Naomi knelt down, her professional mask completely gone now. "I don't want to leave, Mia, but I also don't want to cause problems." "You don't cause problems. You make things better." Mia's lower lip trembled. "Please don't go. Please." Ethan watched as Naomi gathered his daughter into her arms, watched as they held each other, and felt something break inside him. He'd been so focused on protecting everyone, Mia from disappointment, Emily's memory from erasure, himself from making another mistake, that he'd failed to see what was right in front of him. Naomi loved Mia, and Mia loved her back. Whatever this relationship had started as, it had become something real, and he was about to destroy it because he was scared. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "Both of you. I'm sorry." Naomi looked up at him, her eyes questioning. I got spooked, he admitted. Marcus said things that hit old wounds, and instead of trusting what we've built, I panicked. So what now? Naomi asked. Ethan moved closer, kneeling beside them both. Now I stop letting fear make my decisions. Now I choose this. Choose us. If you'll still have me. That depends, Naomi said, a hint of her usual composure returning. Are you all in, or are you going to bail the next time someone questions this? I'm all in, I promise. Pinky promise? Mia asked seriously. Ethan held out his pinky, and Mia hooked hers around it. Then she grabbed Naomi's hand and linked their pinkies too, creating a chain. There, Mia said with satisfaction. Now it's official. We're a family. But even as Naomi stayed, even as they tried to move forward, Ethan couldn't shake the memory of Marcus's words. He found himself second-guessing everything. How he introduced Naomi to people, whether having photos of Emily and photos of Naomi in the same house sent mixed messages, what he should tell Mia about her mother. At Mia's school fundraiser the following week, someone asked if Naomi was Mia's mother. Before he could think, Ethan heard himself say, No, she's just a friend, a close friend. Naomi had been standing right there. The hurt that flashed across her face was devastating. She'd recovered quickly, offering a polite smile to the confused parent, but the damage was done. That night, she didn't stay for dinner. She made an excuse about work and left, and Ethan knew he'd made a terrible mistake. You called her just a friend, Mia said accusingly. Why would you do that? I don't know, sweetheart. I wasn't thinking. You were thinking. You were thinking about what other people would say, but you weren't thinking about her feelings. Out of the mouths of 8-year-olds came devastating truth. Ethan tried calling Naomi that night, but she didn't answer. He sent texts that went unread. For 3 days, there was silence. On the 4th day, she called. I need some space, she said without preamble. To figure out if I can do this, if I can be with someone who's still so uncertain about me. I'm not uncertain about you. You called me just a friend, Ethan, in front of people who matter, in front of your daughter. That's not the behavior of someone who's committed. I panicked. I made a mistake. You've made several mistakes, and each time it feels like I'm fighting for a place in your life that you're not sure you want to give me. That's not true. Then prove it, Naomi said, because right now, all I feel is like a placeholder, someone you're trying on to see if she fits before you commit, and I can't live like that. The line went dead. Ethan stood in his kitchen, phone in hand, and finally understood what he'd been doing. He'd been hedging his bets, keeping one foot in the past just in case the future didn't work out. He'd been so afraid of betraying Emily's memory that he'd betrayed Naomi's trust instead. You messed up, Mia said from the doorway. She'd appeared silently, a habit that sometimes unnerved him. I know. So fix it. How? Mia rolled her eyes with the exasperation of youth dealing with adult incompetence. Tell her she's not just a friend. Tell everyone. Show her you mean it. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. You're just making it hard because you're scared. His 8-year-old daughter had him completely figured out, and Ethan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That night, alone in his room, he looked at the photo of Emily on his nightstand, really looked at it for the first time in months. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, he whispered, but I can't keep living in the past. Mia needs more. I need more. And Naomi, she's good for us. She makes us better. I think you'd like her. The photo didn't answer, but somehow saying the words out loud helped. Emily was gone. Loving Naomi didn't erase that. It just meant his heart had room for both grief and joy, both memory and possibility. He picked up his phone and typed out a message. I love you. Not as a convenience or a solution or because you fit some practical need. I love you because you're brilliant and brave and because you love my daughter like she's yours. I love you because you make our house feel like home again, and I'm done being afraid of that. Please give me another chance to prove it. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. Then he waited. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. Ethan lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he'd waited too long to figure out what mattered. His phone finally buzzed at 2 a.m. Naomi. I love you too, but love isn't enough if you're going to keep choosing fear over us. I need to know you're ready, really ready. Ethan, I am. I swear I am. Tell me how to prove it. Naomi, figure that out yourself, and when you do, call me. It wasn't a rejection, but it wasn't acceptance either. It was a challenge, and Ethan knew he had one shot to get this right. Ethan spent the next morning pacing his kitchen like a caged animal, phone in hand, rereading Naomi's message until the words blurred together. Figure it out himself. Prove he was ready. The challenge was clear, but the path forward felt murky, obscured by years of grief and fear he'd mistaken for loyalty. Mia sat at the table, her dragon coloring book open but ignored, watching him with the kind of solemn intensity that made him feel like she could see straight through him. You're thinking too hard, she said finally. I'm trying to figure out how to fix this. It's not that complicated, Daddy. Then what should I do? Mia set down her crayon and looked at him with the matter-of-fact wisdom that 8-year-olds sometimes possessed in devastating clarity. You should stop acting like loving Miss Naomi means you didn't love Mom. They're different. That's okay. The simplicity of it hit him like a punch. His daughter had figured out in one sentence what he'd been struggling with for months. When did you get so smart? He asked, his voice thick. I've always been smart. You just don't always listen. She wasn't wrong about that either. Ethan pulled out a chair and sat across from her. You really like Naomi, don't you? I love her, Mia said simply. She makes me laugh. She tries really hard even when she doesn't know what she's doing. Like when she tried to make my lunch and forgot to take the plastic off the cheese. Or when she helped with my math homework and had to look up how to do fractions on her phone. A small smile played at her lips. She's not perfect, but she's ours. Ours, Ethan repeated. Yeah, like how Sir Puffington is mine, and the blue blanket is yours, and the house is ours. She's ours. If you stop being dumb about it, I'll try to stop being dumb about it. Good, because I miss her. And I can tell you miss her too, even though you're trying to hide it. She was right. The house felt emptier without Naomi's presence. No briefcase by the door, no coffee mug in the sink, no sound of her voice reading bedtime stories with dramatic flair that made Mia giggle. 3 days of silence had been enough to show Ethan exactly how much space she'd come to occupy in their lives. But knowing he'd messed up and knowing how to fix it were two different things. Naomi had asked for proof, for something that showed he was ready to commit without reservation. Words wouldn't be enough this time. He needed action. The answer came to him in the middle of the afternoon, so obvious he wondered why it had taken him this long. He grabbed his phone and made a call. Marcus, it's Ethan. We need to talk. The pause on the other end was heavy with tension. I don't think we have anything to say to each other. Please, just give me 10 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Another pause, then a reluctant sigh. Fine, 10 minutes. They met at a coffee shop near Marcus's office, the same chain where Ethan and Naomi had had their first real conversation months ago. The irony wasn't lost on him. Marcus arrived in his typical uniform of khakis and a polo shirt, his face set in grim lines that made him look older than his 38 years. Talk, Marcus said, not bothering to order anything. Ethan took a breath, choosing his words carefully. I know you think I'm trying to replace Emily, that by letting Naomi into our lives, I'm somehow dishonoring your sister's memory, and I need you to understand that's not what this is. Then what is it? It's survival. It's giving Mia a chance to have a mother figure. It's allowing myself to be happy again after 6 years of just existing. Ethan leaned forward. Emily was the love of my life. She gave me Mia, and she gave me years of happiness I'll never forget. But she's gone, Marcus, and I can't spend the rest of my life as a monument to her memory. So you're moving on. I'm moving forward. There's a difference. Moving on implies leaving her behind. Moving forward means carrying her with me while still living my life. Marcus's jaw clenched. She's my sister, my baby sister. I was there when she died, Ethan. I watched the machines get turned off. I held your daughter while you fell apart. And now I'm supposed to watch you build a new family, like the old one never mattered. The old one will always matter. But Mia needs more than memories and photo albums. She needs someone present, someone who can braid her hair and help with homework and show up to her school events. Someone who loves her not because they have to, but because they choose to. And Naomi is that person? She wants to be. She's trying to be. But I keep sabotaging it because I'm terrified of what people like you will think. I'm terrified that choosing happiness means I didn't love Emily enough. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against the table. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer. You know what Emily told me? The day before she died, when she was complaining about her headache and we were joking about her being dramatic? Ethan shook his head, something tightening in his chest. She said if anything ever happened to her, she hoped you'd find someone else. Someone who would love you and Mia the way you deserved. She said she couldn't stand the thought of you being alone forever. Marcus's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I didn't want to remember that. It was easier to be angry at you than to accept that she'd want this. I didn't know she said that. Well, she did. And I've been a jackass about it because watching you move on feels like losing her all over again. But that's my problem, not yours. Marcus rubbed his face tiredly. Tell me about her, this Naomi. Is she good to Mia? She's wonderful with Mia. Patient, kind, genuinely interested in her life. She reads dragon books even though fantasy isn't her thing. She learned to make pancakes shaped like dinosaurs because Mia mentioned she liked them once. She shows up, Marcus, every single time. And you love her? Yeah, I do. Not in the same way I loved Emily, but that doesn't make it less real. Marcus nodded slowly. Then I'm sorry for what I said at the art show, for making you feel like you had to choose between your past and your future. Emily would be furious with me for that. She'd understand where it came from. Maybe, but she'd still tell me to stop being an idiot and let you be happy. Marcus extended his hand across the table. So I'm going to do what my sister would want. I'm going to support you, and I'd like to meet Naomi, properly this time, without being a judgmental ass. Ethan shook his hand, relief flooding through him. Thank you. That means more than you know. Just promise me something. Anything. Keep Emily's memory alive for Mia. Don't let her forget her mother just because she has someone new in her life. I would never do that. Emily is part of who Mia is. That's never going away. They talked for another hour, sharing stories about Emily that they hadn't spoken about in years. Funny moments, frustrating moments, the full complicated truth of a person who'd been more than just a saint. By the time they left, something had shifted between them. Not back to what it was, but forward to something new. But Marcus's approval was only one piece of the puzzle. Ethan still needed to prove himself to Naomi, to show her he was ready to claim their relationship publicly, proudly, without hesitation. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Mia's school was hosting a spring carnival fundraiser, the kind of event where every parent in town showed up to eat overpriced hot dogs and watch their kids win goldfish they didn't want. Ethan had promised Mia they'd go, but now the event took on a different significance. He called Naomi that evening, his heart pounding. Hello? Her voice was cautious, professional. The warmth he'd grown used to was carefully contained. Hi, how are you? Busy. What do you need, Ethan? Straight to business. No small talk, no gentle easing into conversation. He deserved that. There's a school carnival this Saturday. Mia would really like you there, and so would I. A pause. I don't think that's a good idea. Please, just hear me out. I'm listening. You asked me to prove I was ready, to show you I'm serious about this, about us. So I'm asking you to come to this carnival where everyone I know will be there. Parents, teachers, friends, neighbors, all the people I've been hedging around and giving vague answers to about who you are. He took a breath. And I want to introduce you as my girlfriend, as someone important to me and Mia. No qualifiers, no minimizing, no calling you just a friend. Another pause, longer this time. That's a big step for you. I know. And I should have taken it weeks ago. Why now? What changed? I talked to Marcus, Emily's brother, the one who said all those things at the art show that got in my head. And he told me Emily would have wanted this, would have wanted me to be happy, would have wanted Mia to have someone like you in her life. Ethan's voice roughened. But more than that, I realized I don't need his permission or anyone else's. This is my life, Mia's life, and you make both of those lives better. I'm done apologizing for that. He could hear her breathing on the other end, could imagine her processing his words with the same careful consideration she brought to everything. If I come to this carnival, she said finally, and you introduce me as your girlfriend, what happens afterward? When people ask questions or make comments, When someone inevitably brings up Emily, then I'll tell them the truth. That Emily was my wife and I loved her. And that you're my girlfriend and I love you too. Both things can be true. You love me. She said it like she was testing the words, seeing how they felt. I do. I said it in that text, but I should have said it before. I should have said it every day since I realized it. I love you, Naomi, and I'm ready to show it. The silence stretched so long he thought she might have hung up. What time should I be there? She asked finally. The relief was dizzying. 2:00, main entrance. I'll be there. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If you call me just a friend in front of people, I'm leaving and we're done. For real this time. I won't. I promise. Okay then. See you Saturday. She hung up and Ethan sat with his phone in his hand, wondering if he'd just committed to the bravest or stupidest thing he'd ever done. Probably both. When he told Mia that Naomi was coming to the carnival, she actually squealed. Not her usual measured happiness, but genuine uncontained joy. Really? She's really coming? Really? She'll meet us there at 2. Can we get there early to make sure we don't miss her? We can get there at 1:30. Mia launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his waist in a hug that squeezed the breath from his lungs. Thank you, Daddy. Thank you for not being dumb anymore. I'll try to keep it up. Saturday arrived with the kind of perfect spring weather that made outdoor events feel destined rather than planned. Clear blue skies, gentle breeze, temperatures in the mid-60s. Ethan dressed carefully, choosing clothes that felt neither too casual nor too formal, while Mia changed outfits 3 times before settling on her favorite purple dress with the dragon print. They arrived at the school at exactly 1:30. The parking lot was already filling up, parents unloading coolers and lawn chairs, kids running around in the barely controlled chaos that preceded the official start time. Ethan recognized dozens of faces from PTA meetings and school events, felt the weight of their potential judgment settling on his shoulders. Then he thought about Naomi's challenge, about proving he was ready, and the weight lifted. At 1:55, Mia spotted her. There, Daddy, there she is. Naomi walked across the parking lot wearing jeans and a soft green sweater, her hair down around her shoulders instead of pulled back in its usual professional style. She looked nervous, uncertain, nothing like the confident attorney who commanded courtrooms. She looked human and vulnerable and absolutely beautiful. Mia ran to her before Ethan could say anything, throwing herself into Naomi's arms with the same uncontained joy she'd shown at home. Naomi caught her, stumbling slightly, then held on tight. I missed you, Mia said into her shoulder. I missed you too, sweetheart. So much. Ethan approached more slowly, giving them their moment. When Naomi looked up at him over Mia's head, her eyes were bright with tears. Thank you for coming, he said. Thank you for asking. They stood there in the parking lot, a little awkward family unit, while around them the carnival came to life. Then Mia grabbed both their hands. Come on! I want to show you everything. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of carnival games and cotton candy. Ethan watched Naomi try to win Mia a stuffed dragon at the ring toss, her competitive streak showing through as she demanded 3 more tries. He watched Mia teach Naomi how to paint faces at the craft booth, both of them ending up with more paint on themselves than on the paper. He watched them together and felt something settle deep in his chest, a rightness he hadn't felt in years. And then he saw Sarah from his office approaching with her husband, her expression curious and slightly predatory in the way people got when they sensed gossip. Ethan, I haven't seen you in forever. How are you? Her gaze slid to Naomi. And who's this? This was it. The moment he'd been building toward. Ethan felt Naomi tense beside him, felt Mia's hand squeeze his. Sarah, this is Naomi Reed, my girlfriend. The words came out steady, certain, no hesitation. Naomi, this is Sarah Chen. We work together. He felt Naomi's sharp intake of breath, saw the surprise and relief flash across her face. Sarah's eyebrows rose. Girlfriend? Well, this is news. How long have you two been together? A few months, Naomi said, finding her voice. She reached out to shake Sarah's hand with professional courtesy. It's nice to meet you. Likewise. And how did you two meet? At a restaurant on Christmas, Ethan said. Best meal I've ever had. Naomi's lips curved into a small, private smile that made his heart skip. Sarah chatted for a few more minutes, asking the polite, invasive questions people asked when they smelled a story. Ethan answered them all honestly, his hand finding Naomi's and holding on. When Sarah finally moved on to interrogate other parents, Naomi turned to him. "You called me your girlfriend." "I did." Without hesitating. "Not even a little." "And you told her how we met." "Why wouldn't I? It's a good story." Naomi's eyes filled with tears, and she pressed her hand to her mouth. "I didn't think you'd actually do it. I told you I was ready." "I know, but I thought—" She broke off, shaking her head. "People talk, Ethan. They're going to have opinions about how fast this happened, about whether it's appropriate, about whether you should still be grieving. Let them talk. Their opinions don't get a vote in my life." Mia tugged on Naomi's sleeve. "Are you crying because you're happy or sad?" "Happy," Naomi said, kneeling down to Mia's level. "Very, very happy." "Good. Because I want you to meet my teacher. She's been asking about you." They spent the rest of the afternoon being introduced to Mia's world. Her teacher, Mrs. Morrison, who'd heard all about the Dragon Book Club and wanted to thank Naomi for encouraging Mia's reading. Her friend Emma's parents, who'd been wondering when they'd get to meet the mysterious woman Mia kept mentioning. Even Principal Hendricks, who commented on how nice it was to see Ethan looking happy again. Each introduction was a choice, and each time Ethan chose to claim Naomi without apology. "This is my girlfriend. This is Naomi, who's very important to us. This is the woman I'm in love with." The words got easier each time, the fear loosening its grip. They were waiting in line for snow cones when a woman Ethan didn't recognize approached with a concerned expression that immediately set off warning bells. "I'm sorry to intrude," she said, directing her words primarily at Ethan, "but I couldn't help overhearing. You're a widower, is that right?" Ethan's shoulders tensed. "I am." "And how long has your wife been gone?" 6 years. The woman's concern deepened. "Don't you think it's a bit soon to be introducing someone new to your daughter? Children need stability, especially after trauma. Bringing different women in and out of her life could be very damaging." Before Ethan could respond, Naomi spoke up, her voice perfectly polite and perfectly cutting. "I appreciate your concern for Mia's well-being, but I'm not a revolving door of different women. I'm one specific woman who loves this child and has been a consistent presence in her life for months. And I think Mia is capable of speaking for herself about whether that's been damaging." She looked down at Mia, who was watching the exchange with wide eyes. "What do you think, sweetheart? Have I damaged you?" Mia considered this with the seriousness it deserved. "No, you make things better. You're not confusing. You're just here. Like Daddy's here, like I'm here. We're all here together." The woman's face reddened. "I was only trying to help." "I understand," Naomi said, "but we're doing fine. Thank you for your concern." The woman retreated and Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "I'm sorry," he said. "People can be judgmental, invasive, presumptuous." Naomi's eyes sparkled with something between amusement and anger. "I spent 20 years in corporate law, Ethan. I can handle nosy strangers with opinions." That was impressive. "That was me protecting our family. Because that's what we are, right? A family?" The question hung between them, heavy with meaning. This was the moment, the real test, not introducing her to people or calling her his girlfriend, but claiming them as a unit, as something permanent and real. "Yeah," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. "That's what we are." Mia looked up at both of them, snow cone temporarily forgotten. "Does that mean Naomi is going to stay forever?" "If she wants to," Ethan said, looking at Naomi. "If she'll have us." "I'll have you," Naomi said softly. "Both of you. For as long as you'll let me." They stood there in the middle of the carnival, people streaming around them, and Ethan felt the last pieces of his resistance crumble away. This was right. This was what Emily would have wanted. This was what he'd been too scared to reach for until a stranger had asked him an impossible question on Christmas night. The carnival eventually wound down. They helped clean up, Mia's energy finally flagging as the evening approached. Walking back to the parking lot, Mia between them, each holding one of her hands, Ethan caught sight of Marcus standing by his car. Emily's brother raised his hand in a wave, and Ethan waved back. No confrontation, no judgment, just acknowledgement. "Who is that?" Naomi asked. "Marcus." Emily's brother. She stiffened slightly. Should I be worried? No, we talked. He's okay with this now. He wants to meet you properly. When you're ready. That's progress. It is. They reached Naomi's car and Mia immediately launched into negotiations about whether Naomi would come home with them for dinner, for a movie, for the night. Ethan let her plead her case, then looked at Naomi. What do you say? Want to come over? No pressure. Naomi glanced between them, and something in her expression shifted. The caution that had been there since she'd arrived melted away, replaced by pure affection. I'd love to, but I need to stop by my apartment first, change clothes, grab some things. Some things? Mia asked hopefully. Some things, Naomi confirmed, like my toothbrush. And maybe my laptop, since I'm sure your dad won't let me escape work entirely. Does that mean you're spending the night? Naomi looked at Ethan, a question in her eyes. He nodded. Yeah, sweetheart, I'm spending the night. Mia let out another one of those squeals that probably violated noise ordinances, then demanded a group hug right there in the parking lot. They complied. The three of them wrapped together while the sun set behind the school and the last of the carnival crowd dispersed. Later that evening, after pizza and a movie, after Mia had finally crashed in her bed, still wearing her dragon dress, Ethan and Naomi sat on the couch in the dim living room. She'd changed into comfortable clothes, her face scrubbed clean of makeup, looking more relaxed than he'd seen her in weeks. Today was good, she said quietly. It was. Thank you for giving me another chance. Thank you for not wasting it. She turned to face him. I know that was hard for you. Going public like that, claiming me in front of everyone. It should have happened sooner. Maybe. But it happened when it was supposed to. When you were ready. Ethan reached for her hand, threading their fingers together. I've been thinking about something Mia said earlier, about you staying forever. She's 8. Forever to her is probably next week. Maybe. But the question stands. He took a breath, gathering courage. I know we haven't been together that long. I know this all happened fast and unconventionally, but I can't imagine my life without you anymore. Can't imagine coming home to a house that doesn't have your briefcase by the door or your coffee mug in the sink. Ethan, I'm not asking you to marry me tonight, he said quickly. I know we need more time, but I'm asking if you can see yourself here, really here, not just visiting or trying it out, but making this your home, making us your family. Naomi was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. I turned down that promotion, the managing partner position. He blinked, surprised. When? Last week. When we weren't speaking? I kept thinking about what it would mean, the hours, the travel, the prestige, everything I'd worked for. And then I thought about missing Mia's school events, about not being here for bedtime stories, about choosing work over the life I actually want. She smiled. It was an easy decision, actually. Easier than it should have been. You didn't have to do that. I know, but I wanted to, because this is where I want to be. This is the family I want. Not someday, not eventually. Now. Ethan pulled her closer, kissing her with all the emotion he'd been holding back. Relief, love, gratitude, hope. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, she rested her forehead against his. I can't replace her, Naomi whispered. Emily, I can't be her. I don't want you to be. I want you to be you. That's all I've ever wanted. Even when I'm terrible at making lunches and I can't remember which dragon is which, and I work too much. Especially then. She laughed, the sound watery but genuine. I love you. I should have said it before, but I was scared. Scared you'd never really choose me. I'm choosing you every day, in every way that matters. They sat there in the quiet house, holding each other while the world outside moved on without them. Upstairs, Mia slept peacefully, dreaming of dragons and adventures. In the kitchen, 2 coffee mugs sat side by side in the sink. On the refrigerator, Mia's painting from the art show was displayed with pride. My new family. It had started as an impossible proposition. A desperate question asked by a stranger in a crowded restaurant. Can you be my new husband? And somehow, against all logic and expectation, they were building toward an answer. Not yet, but soon. Not rushed, but inevitable. Ethan looked at the photo of Emily on the mantel, visible from where they sat. She was smiling in that picture, radiant and alive. He sent a silent thank you to her memory for the years they'd had, for the daughter she'd given him, for the love that had taught him his heart was capable of healing. Then he turned back to Naomi, to the present, to the future they were creating together. "Stay," he said simply. "I am," she replied. "I'm staying." And in that moment, with her head on his shoulder and her hand in his, Ethan finally understood what moving forward meant. It didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean replacing. It meant making room for both grief and joy, both memory and possibility, both the family he'd lost and the family he was building. It meant choosing love, again and again and again. The weeks that followed the carnival felt like watching a house being built from the foundation up. Naomi didn't officially move in, not yet, but her presence became woven into the fabric of their daily lives in ways that made the house feel complete rather than crowded. Her suits appeared in Ethan's closet. Her law books found space on the shelves next to his architecture volumes. Her favorite tea claimed territory in the kitchen cabinet. Mia treated it like the most natural thing in the world, as if she'd been waiting for this missing piece all along. She started calling Naomi's apartment the old place and referred to their house as home when talking to her at school. Small shifts that meant everything. But Ethan knew there was still one more step he needed to take. One conversation he'd been building toward since that night on the couch when Naomi had said she was staying. The question was how to do it right, how to make it mean something beyond just checking a box or following an expected script. The answer came to him on a Thursday afternoon in late May. He was at his drafting table working on a residential project when his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something made him answer. "Mr. Cole? This is Janet Morrison, Mia's teacher." His stomach dropped. Teachers never called with good news. "Is everything okay? Is Mia hurt?" No, nothing like that. I'm calling because I wanted to talk to you about something Mia wrote in class today. We had an assignment about families and, well," she paused. "I think you should come pick her up and we can discuss it in person. Are you able to come now?" "I'll be there in 15 minutes. He grabbed his keys, sent a quick text to Naomi letting her know what was happening, and drove to the school with his mind racing through possibilities. Mia had been happy lately, hadn't she? She'd been eating, sleeping, doing her homework. There hadn't been any warning signs. Mrs. Morrison met him in the hallway outside her classroom, her expression gentle but serious. Through the window, he could see Mia sitting at her desk, head down, drawing something with intense concentration. "What happened?" Ethan asked. The assignment was to write about what makes their family special. Most kids wrote about vacations or pets or siblings. Mia wrote about you and Naomi. Mrs. Morrison pulled out a piece of paper covered in Mia's careful handwriting. "I think you should read it." Ethan took the paper, his hands not quite steady. The title at the top read, "My Special Family," in Mia's neat print. Below it, she'd written, "My family is special because we choose each other. My mom died when I was little, and I don't remember her much, but Daddy says she was wonderful. Then it was just me and Daddy for a long time. We were sad a lot, but we had each other. Then we met Naomi, and she chose to love us, even though she didn't have to. She's not my mom because I already have a mom in heaven. But she's my Naomi, and that's just as important. Some kids have families that are born together. We're a family that got built from pieces that didn't match until we found each other. That's what makes us special. We fit together on purpose." Ethan had to read it twice before he could see clearly through the blur in his eyes. He looked up at Mrs. Morrison, who was smiling despite the slight shine in her own eyes. "That's quite a perspective for an 8-year-old, she said softly. "She's a pretty remarkable kid." "She is. I wanted to call you because I thought you should see it, and because I wanted you to know that she seems genuinely happy." "Settled. Whatever you and Naomi are doing, it's working." Ethan nodded, not trusting his voice. He went into the classroom and found Mia still drawing. She looked up when she heard him, her expression somewhere between defiant and uncertain. "Am I in trouble?" she asked. "No, sweetheart. Not even a little bit." He knelt beside her desk. "Mrs. Morrison showed me what you wrote, about our family. Did I say something wrong?" "You said something perfect." He pulled her into a hug, holding on tight. "I'm so proud of you. You know that, right?" "I know." She pulled back to look at him. Are you crying? Happy tears, the best kind. Mia studied his face with that unnervingly perceptive gaze she'd inherited from Emily. You're going to ask Naomi to marry you, aren't you? The question shouldn't have surprised him. Nothing about his daughter should surprise him anymore. What makes you say that? Because you look at her the way Prince Philip looks at Sleeping Beauty right before he fights the dragon. Like she's worth anything. When did you get so smart? I've been telling you, Daddy. I've always been smart. They went home together, Mia chattering about her day while Ethan's mind spun with plans. That evening, after Naomi arrived home from a late meeting and Mia was supposedly doing homework in her room, Ethan found himself pacing the kitchen like he had months ago, trying to figure out the right words. Naomi watched him from the table, her laptop open but ignored. You're going to wear a path in the floor. Sorry, just thinking. About? About how to ask you something. She closed her laptop, giving him her full attention. You can ask me anything, you know that. Ethan stopped pacing and looked at her, really looked at her. The professional facade had softened over the months, her sharp edges rounded by laughter and bedtime stories and Saturday morning pancakes. She looked at home here, comfortable in a way that went beyond physical space. I want to do this right, he said, not just throw a question at you in a moment of impulse. I want it to mean something. Understanding dawned in her eyes. Ethan, let me finish, please. He took a breath. You came into my life on the worst night. Christmas, alone in a restaurant, humiliated and convinced I was going to spend the rest of my life being rejected for the crime of loving my daughter. And you looked at everything that scared other people away and asked if you could be part of it. I was desperate, Naomi said softly. So was I. But it was more than that. You saw us, really saw us, and thought we were worth the risk. Worth learning how to braid hair and read dragon books and navigate homework meltdowns. You chose the hard thing because it was also the right thing. It wasn't hard. You two made it easy. We made it chaos. But you stayed anyway. You stayed through my doubts and my fear and my complete inability to trust that this could be real. You stayed when I called you just a friend in public. You stayed when I pushed you away because I was scared of being happy. You kept choosing us even when I gave you every reason not to. Naomi stood, crossing to him. Where is this going? To a question, but I need to ask it right. The way you deserve. Ethan took her hands. I know we agreed to take things slow. I know this all happened faster than conventional wisdom says it should. But conventional wisdom doesn't account for what happens when two broken pieces find out they fit together. We're not broken, Naomi said firmly. We're just different shaped. Different shaped, he agreed, and perfect for each other because of it, not despite it. He could see her starting to understand, could see hope and nervousness and love all mixing in her expression. So here's what I'm thinking, Ethan continued. I want to take you somewhere that matters, and I want to ask you properly, in a place that means something. Will you let me do that? When? This weekend, Saturday night. That's 3 days away. I know, but I need those days to get everything ready, to make it right. Naomi studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but Ethan? Yeah? Wherever you're taking me, whatever you're planning, the answer is already yes. You know that, right? His heart kicked against his ribs. I was hoping, but I didn't want to assume. Assume? I've been yours since that night in the restaurant when you looked at me like I wasn't crazy for asking an impossible question. They kissed, slow and sweet, and Ethan felt the rightness of it settle into his bones. This was going to work. They were going to work. From the hallway came a not-so-subtle cough. They broke apart to find Mia standing there with her arms crossed, trying very hard to look stern. Are you two being romantic? She demanded. Maybe, Ethan said. Good. It's about time. She marched into the kitchen and pulled out a piece of paper from her pocket. I made a list of things you need to remember for the proposal. You made a what? A list. Because you're my dad and I love you, but you're not always great at romantic gestures. No offense. Some taken. Mia ignored him and started reading from her list. Number 1, it has to be somewhere special. Not just any restaurant. Number 2, there should be flowers. Naomi likes orchids, not roses. Number 3, you should tell her why you love her, not just that you love her. Number 4. How long is this list? Naomi asked, clearly trying not to laugh. 7 items, but they're all important. Mia looked up at her. I want him to do this right. You deserve right. Naomi knelt down, pulling Mia into a hug. Thank you, sweetheart. But you know what? Your dad could propose to me in a parking lot and I'd still say yes, because it's not about the where or the how, it's about the us. But parking lots are gross, Mia said practically, and you should still have orchids. Noted, Ethan said. Orchids, not parking lots. Got it. The next 3 days passed in a blur of secret planning. Ethan called in favors, made arrangements, coordinated timing. Mia appointed herself chief consultant and offered opinions on everything from what he should wear to exactly what words he should use. Naomi, for her part, pretended not to notice the whispered conversations and mysterious phone calls, though her barely contained excitement was obvious. Friday night, Marcus called. So I heard through the family grapevine that something's happening tomorrow, he said. News travels fast. Mia called my mom to ask about what kind of flowers Emily liked, because apparently she wanted to make sure you included her somehow. Mom's been crying for an hour. Ethan's throat tightened. I didn't know she did that. That kid has more emotional intelligence than both of us combined. Marcus paused. Are you nervous? Terrified. Good. You should be. Marriage is terrifying. But Ethan? Yeah? I'm happy for you. Emily would be happy for you. And I'm sorry I made this harder than it needed to be. You were protecting your sister's memory. I understand that. Maybe. But she'd want you to be happy more than she'd want me to be protective. Marcus cleared his throat. Anyway, good luck tomorrow. And tell Naomi welcome to the family. Officially. Saturday arrived with weather that felt like a gift. Clear skies, warm but not hot. The kind of evening that made people believe in possibility. Ethan dressed in the navy suit Naomi had once mentioned she liked, straightened his tie 3 times, and tried to calm the nervous energy that had him pacing the bedroom. You look very handsome, Daddy, Mia said from his doorway. She was dressed in her favorite purple dress, the one with dragons, her hair braided the way Naomi had taught her. Thanks, sweetheart. You look beautiful. I know. I picked this specially because I'm going to be in the pictures. The pictures? Of your proposal. I asked Mrs. Patterson to take pictures so we can remember it forever. Of course she had. Ethan should have expected nothing less. Mrs. Patterson arrived to watch Mia for the evening, though Mia had negotiated that she'd be picked up later to see the important moment. The compromise had taken an hour of discussion and involved promises of extra dessert and a new dragon book. Ethan picked up Naomi at 7. She answered her apartment door in a green dress that made his breath catch, her hair down around her shoulders, minimal makeup that let her natural beauty show through. You look amazing, he said. So do you. Are you going to tell me where we're going yet? Not yet, but soon. She laughed and took his arm. This is very mysterious. Mysterious was the goal. He drove them across town, watching her try to figure out their destination from the landmarks they passed. When he pulled into the parking lot of Bella Vista, the Italian restaurant where they'd met on Christmas night, understanding lit up her face. Ethan, she breathed, I told you I wanted somewhere that mattered. The restaurant looked different from how it had that December night. Summer flowers bloomed in the window boxes and warm light spilled onto the sidewalk. But when they walked inside, the hostess led them to the same corner table where Naomi had sat alone, where she'd overheard his date walk out, where she'd asked an impossible question. You reserved this specific table, Naomi said as they sat down. I did, because this is where it started, where you looked at a stranger who'd just been rejected and saw possibility instead of disaster, where you listened to a desperate woman make an insane proposal and didn't immediately run away. They ordered wine, the same kind Naomi had been drinking that night. The waiter, surprisingly, was the same young man who'd served Ethan months ago, and his face lit up with recognition. You came back, both of you. He looked genuinely delighted. I remember you, Christmas night, the lady who left, and then he gestured at Naomi. This started here? It did, Ethan confirmed. That's the best thing I've heard all week. Dinner's on me. Well, not really. I don't have that authority. But I'm going to tell the chef this is a special occasion and you'll get extra dessert. He He bounced away, and Naomi laughed. He seems very invested in our story. It's a good story. It's an insane story. The best ones usually are. They talked through dinner, reminiscing about that first night and all the moments that had led them here. The awkward coffee date where neither of them had known what to say. The first time Naomi had met Mia at the duck pond. The art show and the painting labeled My New Family. The carnival where Ethan had finally claimed her publicly. I've been thinking about that night, Naomi said over dessert. About why I asked what I asked. And I realized it wasn't just because I was desperate or lonely or wanted to be a mother. No? No. It was because when I heard that woman reject you, I recognized something in your face. The same resignation I'd been carrying around for years. This sense that the life we wanted was just out of reach and always would be. And I thought, what if we're both reaching for the wrong things? What if what we need is right in front of us, just in a different package than we expected? And what if we're brave enough to reach for it together? Ethan finished. Exactly. He stood, his heart hammering. This was it, the moment he'd been planning for, building toward. Naomi looked up at him with curiosity, then understanding, then emotion so raw it took his breath away. Naomi Reed, he began, his voice not quite steady. 6 months ago, I was sitting at this table convinced I was going to spend the rest of my life alone. Convinced that being a single father meant being permanently single. And then you asked me the craziest question I'd ever heard. Can you be my new husband? She said softly, remembering. Can you be my new husband? He repeated. Not will you, not would you, but can you? Like it was a matter of capability, not romance. Like love was something we could build instead of something we had to wait to be struck by. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, and Naomi's hand flew to her mouth. And you were right, Ethan continued. We did build it, piece by piece, day by day, through Saturday morning pancakes and dragon book clubs, and learning to braid hair, and figuring out how to be a family that chose itself. We built something real and solid and permanent. Around them, the restaurant had gone quiet. Other diners were watching, the staff pretending not to stare. But Ethan only saw Naomi, tears streaming down her face, her eyes full of love. You came into my life and made it bigger instead of smaller. You loved my daughter like she was your own. You saw my grief and didn't run from it. You stayed through every doubt, every fear, every moment I tried to push you away. And now I can't imagine a single day without you. He opened the box, revealing a ring he'd spent weeks choosing. Not too flashy, not too simple, elegant and unique with a green stone the color of forests, because she'd told Mia that was her favorite color. So now I have a question for you, and I'm hoping you'll think it's slightly less crazy than the one you asked me. He took a breath. Naomi Reed, will you marry me? Will you be Mia's mother and my wife, and the final piece of this family we've been building together? Will you let me spend the rest of my life choosing you the way you chose us? Naomi was nodding before he finished, tears and laughter mixing together. Yes, 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 1,000 times, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she pulled him up and into her arms, kissing him while the restaurant erupted in applause. The waiter whooped. An elderly couple at a nearby table raised their glasses. Someone started a chant of speech, speech, that Naomi graciously ignored in favor of kissing Ethan again. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and grinning, the manager appeared with champagne and the promised extra dessert. Congratulations, he said warmly. The waiter told me you met here. It's not often we get to be part of such a beautiful story. Thank you, Naomi managed, her voice thick with emotion. This place will always be special to us. They celebrated with champagne and chocolate cake, their phones buzzing with messages as word spread. Ethan had barely taken a sip when the restaurant door burst open and Mia barreled in, Mrs. Patterson trailing apologetically behind her. You proposed! You did it! Let me see the ring! Mia skidded to a stop at their table, vibrating with excitement. How did you... Ethan started. I made Mrs. Patterson bring me early so I wouldn't miss it. She tried to make us wait outside, but I heard the clapping, and I just knew. She grabbed Naomi's hand, examining the ring with intense scrutiny. It's perfect. Daddy, you did good. High praise from my consultant, Ethan said dryly. Mia threw herself at Naomi, wrapping her arms around her waist. You're going to be my mom. For real. We're going to be a real family. Naomi held her tight, her eyes meeting Ethan's over Mia's head. We already are a real family, sweetheart. This just makes it official. Can I be a flower girl at the wedding? You can be whatever you want to be. I want to be a dragon rider flower girl with wings. We'll see what we can arrange. Mrs. Patterson approached, her own eyes damp. I'm so sorry, Ethan. She insisted. I tried to keep her in the car, but it's fine, Ethan assured her. More than fine. She should be here for this. They stayed at the restaurant for another hour, celebrating with Mia, who demanded to know every detail of the proposal and whether Ethan had used any of her suggestions from the list. The staff brought her ice cream and let her sit at the table like the adult she considered herself to be. As they were finally leaving, Naomi pulled Ethan aside. I need to tell you something, she said quietly. His stomach fluttered with nerves. Okay. I was so scared tonight. Scared you'd change your mind, that this was moving too fast, that you'd realize you weren't ready. I've spent so many years being disappointed that I almost couldn't let myself hope. And now? Now I'm more terrified than ever, because now I have everything I've ever wanted, and the thought of losing it is overwhelming. She touched his face gently. But I'm choosing to trust this. To trust us. To believe that we're strong enough to build something lasting. We are, Ethan said with certainty. We absolutely are. They drove home together, Mia chattering from the back seat about wedding plans and whether dragons could be part of the ceremony and if she could invite her entire class. Naomi fielded questions with patience and amusement, occasionally catching Ethan's eye in the rearview mirror with expressions that said, our daughter, and what have we gotten ourselves into, and I love this chaos. At home, after Mia had finally been coaxed into bed still wearing her purple dress because she refused to take it off on the most important day of her life, Ethan and Naomi sat on the porch in the warm night air. We're engaged, Naomi said wonderingly, looking at her ring in the porch light. We are. We're getting married. We are. This is real. It is. She laughed, the sound bright and free. 6 months ago, if someone had told me I'd be here, engaged to a man I met in a restaurant, planning to be a mother to his daughter, I'd have said they were crazy. 6 months ago, if someone had told me I'd be happy again, I'd have said the same thing. Naomi leaned her head on his shoulder. We did it, didn't we? We took something impossible and made it real. We did, with a lot of help from an 8-year-old consultant. She's going to be insufferable about this. You know that, right? She'll tell everyone she planned the whole thing. Let her. She kind of did. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the neighborhood. Somewhere, a dog barked. A car drove past. The ordinary sounds of ordinary life that felt extraordinary because they were sharing it. I love you, Naomi said into the darkness. I love you too. Thank you for taking a chance on my crazy proposal. Thank you for asking it. Inside the house, through Mia's open window, they could hear her singing softly to herself. Some nonsense song about dragons and weddings and families that fit together on purpose. The sound of a child who felt safe, loved, complete. Ethan thought about that Christmas night, about sitting alone in this same restaurant, feeling like his life was over before it had really begun. About a stranger's impossible question that had seemed like either the craziest or bravest thing he'd ever heard. It had turned out to be both. And it had turned out to be exactly what they all needed. The wedding could wait. The details could be figured out later. Right now, in this moment, with Naomi's hand in his and their daughter singing upstairs and the whole future stretching out before them like an unwritten story, Ethan Cole felt something he hadn't felt in 6 years. He felt whole. The engagement lasted 3 months, which Mia declared was way too long, and Naomi considered remarkably fast, and Ethan thought was exactly right. They spent those months not just planning a wedding, but cementing the foundation of the life they were building together. Naomi officially moved in 2 weeks after the proposal. Not gradually, not tentatively, but with the full commitment of someone who'd finally found where she belonged. Her apartment lease ended, her furniture merged with theirs, and suddenly the house that had felt too quiet for 6 years was filled with the comfortable chaos of 3 people learning to share space. You leave your shoes everywhere, Naomi said one morning, stepping over Ethan's sneakers in the hallway for the 3rd time. You leave case files on every flat surface, he countered, gesturing at the stack of legal briefs on the kitchen counter. You both leave dragon books in weird places, Mia announced from the table where she was eating cereal. I found one in the bathroom yesterday. They looked at each other and laughed, because this was what normal looked like. Not perfect, not effortless, but real and comfortable in theirs. The wedding planning happened in bursts between normal life. Naomi insisted on keeping it small and intimate, just family and close friends. Mia lobbied hard for dragons to be incorporated somehow, and after much negotiation, they compromised on dragon-themed decorations for the reception and a cake topper featuring a dragon instead of traditional figurines. This is the weirdest wedding planning I've ever been part of, Sarah from Ethan's office said when she stopped by to drop off some documents and found them debating the merits of different dragon species for the centerpieces. Weird is our specialty, Naomi said cheerfully. But beneath the planning and the everyday routines, there was one conversation they still needed to have. One person whose presence lingered in photographs and memories, whose absence shaped everything they were building. Came to a head 3 weeks before the wedding, when Mia asked a question neither of them had been prepared for. They were in the living room, Ethan working on wedding seating charts while Naomi reviewed a contract for work she was doing as an independent consultant. Mia had been quiet for a while, supposedly reading, but Ethan could tell from the way she was staring at the same page that something was on her mind. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. "Always," Naomi replied, setting aside her papers. Mia's fingers twisted in her lap, a sign of nerves that made Ethan immediately alert. "When you marry Daddy, are you going to be my mom? Like, my real mom?" The question hung in the air. Naomi and Ethan exchanged glances, and he could see her carefully choosing her words. "I'll be your mom in every way that matters," Naomi said gently. "But you already have a mom, sweetheart. Your first mom. The one who gave birth to you and loved you before she had to leave." "I don't really remember her," Mia admitted, her voice small. "Just little bits. The way she smelled sometimes, how she sang, but mostly I know her from pictures and stories." Ethan's chest tightened. They talked about Emily over the years, shared memories, kept her present in Mia's life. But this was different. This was Mia trying to reconcile two mothers, trying to figure out where her heart had room for both. "That's okay," Naomi said. "You were so little when she died. But not remembering doesn't mean she wasn't important. Doesn't mean she didn't love you with everything she had. I know." Mia looked down at her hands. "But sometimes I feel bad, because I love you and I want you to be my mom, but I feel like that means I'm forgetting her, like I'm being disloyal or something." "Oh, sweetheart." Naomi moved to sit beside Mia on the couch, pulling her close. "Love doesn't work like that. It's not a pie where loving me means less love for her. Your heart is big enough for both of us." "Are you sure?" "I'm completely sure. You want to know something?" Naomi glanced at Ethan, who nodded encouragingly. "Before your dad and I got engaged, I was terrified about this exact thing. I worried that loving you and being your mom would somehow dishonor your first mom's memory, that people would think I was trying to replace her." "You're not replacing her," Mia said fiercely. "I know that now, but it took me a while to understand that I'm not taking her place. I'm just filling a different space, a space that was empty and needed someone." Naomi touched Mia's face gently. "Your first mom gave you life. She gave you your beautiful eyes and your stubborn chin and probably your love of dragons if your dad's stories are true. She'll always be your mom. I'm just your other mom, the one who gets to be here now." "My other mom," Mia repeated, testing the words. "I like that." Ethan felt something unlock in his chest, a knot he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. This was the conversation he'd been afraid to have, the acknowledgement that loving Naomi didn't erase Emily, that both women could exist in their family without competition or comparison. "I have an idea," he said, moving to join them on the couch. "What if we did something to include your first mom in the wedding, to show that she's still part of our family, even though she's not here?" "Like what?" Mia asked. "I don't know yet, but we could figure it out together." They spent the next hour brainstorming, ideas flowing freely. Some were too elaborate, some too simple, but eventually they landed on something that felt right. They would reserve a seat at the ceremony with a framed photo of Emily, a visual representation that she was still part of their family. And Mia would carry a small locket with Emily's picture during the ceremony, keeping her first mom close to her heart. I like it, Mia said finally. It feels right. Like we're not forgetting her, but we're not stuck in the past either. Exactly, Naomi agreed. That night, after Mia had gone to bed, Ethan found Naomi standing in front of the mantel, looking at the photos displayed there. Pictures of Emily were interspersed with newer photos of the three of them, creating a visual timeline of their family's evolution. I used to be so scared of these pictures, Naomi admitted. Scared they meant I was temporary, a placeholder until you decided you'd grieved enough. And now? Now I see them differently. They're not competition, they're context. They show where you came from, what you've been through, and that makes what we have now even more meaningful. She turned to look at him. She was beautiful, Emily, and from everything you've told me, she was extraordinary. She was, Ethan agreed. But so are you, in completely different ways. I'll never be her. I don't want you to be. I want you to be you. That's all I've ever wanted. Naomi leaned into him, and they stood there in the quiet house, surrounded by photographs of past and present, building toward a future that honored both. The 3 weeks before the wedding passed in a blur of final preparations and small moments that felt significant. Marcus came to dinner and spent an hour talking to Naomi about Emily, sharing stories and memories that made them all laugh and cry. It felt like a passing of the torch, an official welcome into the family that went beyond legal documents or ceremony. You're good for them, Marcus told Naomi as he was leaving. Both of them. Emily would approve. That means more than you know, Naomi said, and meant it. The night before the wedding, they broke tradition and spent the evening together rather than apart. Mia insisted on it, arguing that they were already a family, so pretending otherwise for one night was silly and outdated. Neither Ethan nor Naomi had the heart to disagree. They ordered pizza and watched Mia's favorite movie, sprawled on the couch in comfortable pajamas. Halfway through, Mia fell asleep between them, her head on Naomi's lap, her feet in Ethan's. Last night as an almost family, Naomi whispered. Tomorrow, we make it official. Are you nervous? Terrified. You? Completely, but in a good way. They sat there in the flickering light of the TV, their daughter sleeping peacefully between them, and Ethan thought about how far they'd come from that Christmas night. From strangers to partners to this, the precipice of forever. The wedding day dawned clear and warm, one of those perfect September mornings that felt like nature's blessing. They'd chosen to marry in the same park where Naomi had first met Mia, by the duck pond that had witnessed the beginning of their unconventional family. Ethan stood under an arbor woven with flowers and waited for his bride, Marcus, beside him as best man. Mia was somewhere with Naomi, getting ready for her role as the Dragon Rider flower girl, complete with the wings she'd been promised. You look terrified, Marcus observed. I am terrified. What if I mess up my vows? What if you'll be fine, and even if you mess up, she'll still marry you? That woman is as committed to this as you are. Yeah, Ethan said, feeling some of the tension ease. Yeah, she is. The music started, a string quartet playing something soft and romantic. The gathered crowd of about 40 people turned to watch. First came Mia, scattering flower petals with solemn concentration, her dragon wings glittering in the sunlight. She took her role seriously, making sure every step was covered in petals before moving forward. Then came Naomi. She walked alone, having decided she didn't need anyone to give her away because she was choosing this herself. Her dress was simple and elegant, green like forests, her hair swept up with small white flowers woven through. She carried a bouquet of orchids and looked at Ethan like he was the only person in the world. He forgot to breathe. She reached the arbor and Mia took her place beside them, completing their triangle. The officiant, a family friend who'd known Ethan since college, smiled at the three of them. We're gathered here today to celebrate something beautiful, she began. Not just the marriage of two people, but the formation of a family built on choice, on courage, and on love that defied conventional expectations. She talked about their journey, about how they'd found each other in the midst of separate griefs and loneliness, about how they'd chosen to build something new rather than remain broken, about how Mia had been the heart of this family from the beginning, the reason they'd all found each other. Then it was time for vows. Ethan went first, his hands shaking slightly as he held Naomi's. 6 months ago, I thought my life was over, not literally, but in all the ways that mattered. I thought I'd used up my chance at love, at partnership, at happiness. And then you walked into that restaurant and asked me the craziest question I'd ever heard. He paused, smiling at the memory. You asked if I could be your new husband. And I said yes, not because it made sense, but because something in me recognized that you were the answer to a question I'd been too afraid to ask. He took a breath, willing his voice to stay steady. You came into my life and saw possibility where everyone else saw complications. You loved my daughter like she was your own. You stayed through every doubt, every fear, every moment I tried to push you away. You taught me that love isn't something that happens to you. It's something you build, piece by piece, day by day, with someone brave enough to build it with you. Tears were streaming down Naomi's face, but she was smiling. I promise to choose you every day, Ethan continued. Not because it's easy, but because you're worth every difficult choice. I promise to be your partner, your supporter, your person. I promise to love you not in spite of who you are, but because of who you are. And I promise that our family will always have room for both grief and joy, both memory and possibility, both the love I had and the love I have now. He looked at Mia. And I promise that we'll always honor your first mom, that she'll always be part of our story, part of our family, because love isn't about replacing, it's about adding to. Mia nodded, touching the locket around her neck. Naomi took a shaky breath before starting her own vows. I spent a lot of years chasing the wrong things. Success, achievement, the appearance of having it all together. And then I lost the one thing I wanted most, and I realized that all my achievements meant nothing if I had no one to share them with. She squeezed Ethan's hands. When I asked you that question in the restaurant, I was desperate. I was broken. I was reaching for anything that might fill the emptiness. But what I found was so much more than I was looking for. I found a partner who saw my flaws and loved me anyway. I found a daughter who taught me that motherhood isn't about biology. It's about showing up. I found a family that let me in even when I had no idea what I was doing. Her voice broke, and she paused to collect herself. I promise to love you both with everything I have. I promise to be present, to show up, to be the person you can count on. I promise to read dragon books even when I don't understand them, to make pancakes even when they turn out terrible, to braid hair even when my fingers don't cooperate. I promise to choose this family every single day, through good times and hard times, through joy and grief. She looked at Mia. And I promise to honor your first mom, to keep her memory alive, to tell you stories about her, to make sure you know that loving me doesn't mean forgetting her. She'll always be your mom. I'm just lucky enough to be your other mom. Mia started crying, and Naomi pulled her into the circle, the three of them holding each other, while the officiant wiped her own eyes and the guests sniffled quietly. I think, the officiant said with a watery smile, that we can skip straight to the rings. They exchanged rings, simple bands that matched the engagement ring Ethan had chosen. Then the officiant looked at Mia. And I understand you have something to add? Mia nodded seriously. She pulled out a piece of paper from her pocket, smoothing it carefully. I wrote vows too, because I'm part of this family and I wanted to make promises. Go ahead, sweetheart, Naomi encouraged. Mia read in her clear, confident voice. I promise to remember that families aren't perfect. Sometimes we'll fight and get mad at each other. That's okay. I promise to talk about my feelings instead of keeping them inside. I promise to help around the house even when I don't want to. And I promise to love both my moms, the one in heaven and the one here with me, because I have room in my heart for both. She looked up. That's all. Can I hug you now? Everyone laughed, the tension breaking into joy. Mia hugged Naomi, then Ethan, then demanded they all hug together. The officiant declared them a family, and the small crowd erupted in applause. You may kiss your bride, she added with a grin. Ethan did, pulling Naomi close and kissing her while their daughter cheered and their friends celebrated and the ducks in the pond swam by, completely oblivious to the significance of the moment. The reception was held in a small restaurant, not Bella Vista, but a place that felt intimate and warm. They'd kept it simple, just dinner and dancing and cake. Mia gave a speech that was equal parts sweet and embarrassing, revealing that Ethan had practiced his proposal in front of the mirror at least 20 times, and that Naomi cried during dragon books even though she pretended not to. Marcus gave a toast that started with memories of Emily and ended with a welcome to Naomi. My sister would have loved you, he said, raising his glass. Not because you're like her, but because you're exactly what they need. Thank you for loving them. Sarah from the office gave a toast about how she'd known the moment she set Ethan up on that disastrous blind date that the universe had other plans. I take full credit for this, she declared. If I hadn't set him up with Jennifer, he never would have been in that restaurant to meet Naomi. You're welcome. That is absolutely not how credit works, Ethan called out, but everyone laughed anyway. They danced, all three of them together for the first dance, then Ethan with Naomi, then Naomi with Mia, then a complicated group dance that dissolved into giggles. The evening felt less like a formal wedding and more like a celebration of something that had already existed, a public declaration of private truth. As the night wound down and guests began to leave, Ethan found himself standing by the reserved seat where Emily's photograph sat among flowers. Naomi appeared beside him, sliding her hand into his. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for including her, for making sure she's still part of this. She's part of who we are. Leaving her out would be like leaving out a piece of our story." "Do you think she'd be happy with how things turned out?" Ethan looked at the photo, at Emily's bright smile, frozen in a moment of joy. "I think she'd be thrilled. I think she'd tell me I got lucky twice in one lifetime and not to screw it up." "Don't screw it up then." "I won't." They stood there together, honoring the past while celebrating the present, and it felt like everything finally clicking into place. The honeymoon was postponed because Mia had school and neither Ethan nor Naomi wanted to leave her behind. Instead, they took a long weekend at a cabin in the mountains, just the three of them, hiking and reading and being together without the pressure of daily routines. One evening, sitting on the cabin's porch watching the sunset, Mia asked another question. "Are you going to have more kids?" Ethan and Naomi exchanged glances. They'd discussed this privately, but hadn't brought it up with Mia yet. "We've talked about it," Naomi said carefully, "but nothing's decided. Would you be okay if we did?" Mia thought about it with her usual seriousness. "I think so. It might be nice to have a brother or sister, but only if they like dragons." "That seems like a reasonable requirement," Ethan said, trying not to smile. "And they can't take my room." "Also reasonable. And I get to help name them." "Within reason," Naomi qualified. "No dragons for first names." "What about middle names?" "We'll see." Mia seemed satisfied with this negotiation and went back to reading her book. Ethan and Naomi shared a look over her head, a silent conversation about possibility and future and all the ways their family might continue to grow. Later, after Mia had gone to bed, they talked about it more seriously. "I know I can't carry a baby," Naomi said, "but there are other options. Surrogacy, adoption, fostering. If you want more children, I'm open to it." "What do you want?" Ethan asked. "Honestly, I'm happy with us exactly as we are. Mia is everything I dreamed of in a daughter. If we never have another child, I'll still feel like the luckiest woman alive." She paused. "But if you want more, if Mia wants siblings, I'm open to that too. I just don't want you to think I need to be pregnant to feel fulfilled. That ship has sailed, and I've made peace with it." "I'm happy with us too," Ethan said. "And if we decide to expand our family someday, it'll be because we all want it, not because of some idea of what a family should look like." "God, when did we get so healthy?" Naomi laughed. 6 months ago, I was proposing to strangers, and now we're having mature conversations about family planning." "Character development," Ethan said solemnly. "It's what happens in good stories." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the forest. Somewhere in the cabin, Mia was probably reading with a flashlight under her covers, breaking the bedtime rules in the time-honored tradition of children everywhere. "I've been thinking," Naomi said eventually, "about that first night, about why I asked what I asked. You've said it was because you were desperate. It was, but it was more than that. I think some part of me recognized you, recognized that you were safe, that you were kind, that you were someone who would take a crazy question seriously instead of dismissing it. I took a leap of faith, but it wasn't blind. Some part of me knew you'd catch me." "I almost didn't," Ethan admitted. "I almost wrote you off as crazy and went home and forgot the whole thing." "But you didn't." "But I didn't, because some part of me recognized you too. Recognized that you were offering something I didn't even know I needed." "We saved each other," Naomi said softly. "We did. But more than that, we chose each other. Every day since then, we've kept choosing each other. That's what makes this real. The weekend ended too soon, but they returned home feeling more settled, more certain. Life resumed its normal rhythm, but everything felt different now. Better. Complete. Naomi officially adopted Mia 3 months after the wedding. The legal process was straightforward since Ethan was in full support, and the day they went to court to finalize it felt almost as significant as the wedding itself. The judge smiled at them over her paperwork. This is one of my favorite kinds of cases. A child gaining a parent instead of losing one. Mia, do you understand what's happening today? Yes, ma'am, Mia said seriously. Naomi is becoming my legal mom. She's already my real mom, but now the papers will say so too. That's exactly right. And you want this? More than anything. The judge signed the papers, and just like that, Naomi Reed became Naomi Cole, legal parent to Mia Cole, wife to Ethan Cole. A family not by blood, but by choice, by commitment, by love that had started with an impossible question and grown into something beautiful. They celebrated with ice cream and called Marcus, who cheered so loudly they had to hold the phone away from their ears. Sarah sent a text that read, "I told you I deserved credit for this," followed by a string of heart emojis. That night, Ethan found Naomi in Mia's room, watching their daughter sleep. She looked up when he entered, her eyes bright. "I'm a mom," she whispered. "Legally, officially, completely. I'm her mom." "You've been her mom for months." "I know, but this makes it feel permanent, like it's not just something we're trying out, like it's forever." Ethan wrapped his arms around her from behind, and they stood there watching Mia sleep, this child who had lost one mother and gained another, who had taught them both that family was about showing up, about choosing each other, about love in all its forms. "Thank you," Naomi said eventually. "For what?" "For taking a chance on a desperate woman in a restaurant, for letting me into your life, for giving me the family I'd given up hoping for. Thank you for asking an impossible question, for being brave enough to reach for what you wanted, for loving us even when I made it difficult." They stood there in the quiet house, their daughter sleeping peacefully, their future stretching out before them like an unwritten story. Outside, the world continued its ordinary march forward. Inside, 3 people who'd been lost had found each other and built something extraordinary from the pieces of their broken dreams. Christmas came around again, marking a full year since that fateful night in the restaurant. They'd made reservations at Bella Vista, the 3 of them, to celebrate the anniversary of the beginning. The same waiter greeted them with a huge smile. "The proposal couple, and you brought the little one this time." "We're married now," Mia announced proudly. "And Naomi adopted me. We're a real family." "You were always a real family," the waiter said kindly. "But congratulations. Same table?" "Same table," Ethan confirmed. They settled into the corner where it had all started, and Ethan looked at his wife and daughter and felt gratitude so overwhelming it almost hurt. A year ago, he'd been sitting here alone, rejected and resigned. Now he was sitting here with everything he'd ever wanted and some things he hadn't known to want. "To impossible questions," Naomi said, raising her water glass in a toast. "To brave answers," Ethan added, clinking his glass against hers. "To families that fit together on purpose," Mia finished, making them both laugh. They toasted and ordered dinner and fell into the easy conversation of people who knew each other's rhythms. Mia told them about a new dragon book series she'd discovered. Naomi talked about a case she'd won that week. Ethan described a design he was working on that was giving him trouble. Ordinary conversation about ordinary lives that felt absolutely extraordinary because they were sharing it. As they were finishing dessert, Mia pulled out a piece of paper she'd been hiding under the table. "I wrote something for the anniversary. Can I read it?" "Of course, sweetheart," Naomi said. Mia cleared her throat importantly. "It's called How My Family Got Built. Once upon a time, my daddy was sad because my first mom died, and Naomi was sad because she wanted to be a mom but couldn't have babies. Then they met in a restaurant and decided to be sad together. Except they weren't sad together. They were happy. And then I got 2 moms instead of 0 moms, and Daddy got to smile again, and Naomi got to read dragon books, even though she doesn't really like them that much." She looked up. "The end. That's my story." Ethan's vision blurred. "That's a perfect story, Mia." "I know. I'm good at stories. It's because you read to me a lot." "Both of us," Naomi corrected gently. Both of us read to you. Both my moms, Mia agreed, and there was such satisfaction in her voice, such complete acceptance, that Ethan felt the last piece of his guilt dissolve. This was right. This family, built from broken pieces, choosing each other every day, this was what Emily would have wanted, what he wanted, what they all deserved. They walked home through the Christmas-lit streets, Mia between them holding both their hands, chattering about everything and nothing. The neighborhood looked the same as it had a year ago, but Ethan saw it differently now, not as something to endure alone, but as something to share. At home, they made hot chocolate and watched a Christmas movie, Mia falling asleep halfway through in her usual spot between them. Ethan carried her to bed while Naomi cleaned up the kitchen, ordinary routines that felt sacred in their ordinariness. Later, lying in bed with his wife curled against him, Ethan thought about the journey that had brought them here. The grief, the loneliness, the desperate question that had changed everything, the fear and doubt, and moments of wondering if they were making a terrible mistake. The gradual building of trust, of love, of family.
"What are you thinking about?" Naomi murmured sleepily. "About how 6 months felt like too fast until it didn't. And now? Now it feels like we've been together forever. In the best way." She smiled against his shoulder. "We have been together forever, just not in linear time. We were always going to find each other. We were always going to be this."
"You think so?"
"I know so. Some things are inevitable. We just had to be brave enough to reach for it."
Ethan kissed her forehead and held her close, feeling the steady rhythm of her breathing, the warmth of her body, the simple miracle of not being alone anymore. In the next room, Mia slept with Sir Puffington clutched in one arm and dreams of dragons filling her head. On the mantel downstairs, photos of two families sat side by side, past and present, both loved, both honored, both essential to the story of who they'd become. And in that moment, Ethan Cole understood something profound. Family wasn't about biology or tradition or following the expected path. Family was about showing up, about choosing each other when it would be easier to walk away, about building something beautiful from broken pieces and calling it whole. It had started with an impossible question on the worst night of his life. "Can you be my new husband?" And the answer, worked out over months of pancakes and dragon books and learning to trust again, was yes. Yes, he could. Yes, they all could. Yes, they were building something that defied convention and expectation and every reasonable prediction about how quickly love could grow. They were a family built on purpose, fit together by choice, held together by love that was both practical and profound. And that was more than enough. It was everything. Outside, snow began to fall, blanketing the world in white. Christmas lights twinkled in windows up and down the street. Somewhere, people were celebrating or grieving, hoping or despairing, reaching for love or running from it. But here, in this house, 3 people who'd been lost had found each other. 3 pieces that hadn't matched until suddenly they did. 3 hearts learning that love wasn't about replacing or forgetting, but about making room for both memory and possibility, both grief and joy, both the family you lost and the family you chose. And as Ethan drifted off to sleep, his last thought was simple and complete. They'd made it. Against all odds and expectations, they'd built something real and lasting and beautiful. They'd become a family. And that impossible question asked in a crowded restaurant on Christmas night had turned out to be the beginning of everything that mattered. The end.